Hello, welcome to the channel and thanks for joining me. Today we're looking at a Sanyo M3330. It's not the first one we've had on the channel, but this is a bit of a follow-up video. We had a unboxing video a little while ago of some Walkmans, like a consignment that I bought on eBay, and I think there were about 8 different items in there. At the time of recording, I've already repaired the Alba CP3 and the Sanyo MG7, so I thought I'd take a look at this beautiful little Sanyo unit, the M3330. I say little, it's far from it actually. It's like a brick really. Let me just have a look. So here's a cassette tape, and that is that's the absolute beast that is the player. It's just ginormous. However, they are so rugged, so reliable, beautiful things, love them to bits. Fairly hard to service, or at least to start with they are, and they've never been serviced by and large when you buy them second hand, but I always service mine before I send them out. So what have we got then? It's from about 1981, and the press studs that you could see on the case were actually rather nice. And as I was saying, I bought this as part of a consignment, a box of about 8 different units, and I'm working my way through them just as a bit of an intellectual exercise to see whether or not it was viable or worth doing. This was the main one really that I bought it for, but I remember when I did the unboxing video that I was pleasantly surprised by this. Normally you buy sort of ragtags of Walkmans or what have you in mixed sets or bundles online, and they're generally really rubbish and you know, good for spares, but as long as you go into it knowing that you'll probably end up with some that are really bad and some that are irreparable, now and again you might just find a gem, and I think that's what's happened with this one. So the case is in beautiful condition. It'll all get a deep clean and a polish a bit later, but for now it's all there. The press studs are working nicely. All the covers are still intact where they're glued over the fasteners for the belt clip. All lovely. It hasn't gone sticky. A lot of these can get that kind of horrible tacky, degraded, sticky vinyl. That one's not. And as I say, I've not polished this up yet, but look at it. Hardly anywhere. It must have spent its life in the case. Yes, it's dirty. Can you see that? Someone spilt coffee or something down there. So we'll have to get in there and make sure everything's clean and working nicely. But look, the print is still good. Bright blue plastic still for the mute switch. Well, it's not really a full mute. It's kind of like an attenuator, so that you can have a conversation with someone whilst you've still got your headphones on. And inside here we've got the battery cover does click in nicely, as you could see. Springs have seen slightly better days, it's got to be said. They've all got a bit crusty, a bit green. However, let's just give it a whirl, see if it works. We can always clean that. I'm quite confident that we'll be able to just use a little bit of acid to get those contacts cleaned up anyways. But first thing I want to do is see whether or not it works as is. That'll be a no. That's a shame. Give it a bit, the battery's a bit of a wiggle. Any signs of life at all? Ah, there we go. There's the LED operation light, and you can see that it's turning as well. So rewind, good. Fast forward, good. Right, okie dokie. Let's get some speakers out. As always, I'll get my little trusty JSX37 speakers here. I've got a semi-sacrificial tape that gets chewed up and spat out more often than not, but we'll try it just to see what happens. And play. Alright, a bit of a crackle on the volume pop, but nothing major. Right, let's have a look. Next track. Good. Well, I've already worked that crackle out just by moving the pot. Balance. Yes. See if you can pick that up. So, oh, yeah, it's starting to slip now. Belts are starting to slip. Let's have a look. Oh, hang on. Yeah, there we go. Chewed up tape, but that's why I use, as I say, these semi-sacrificial ones. Bit of a shame, but what we'll do, I'm not convinced it's getting consistent power yet, to be fair, because I think we need to clean the battery contacts, which we'll do in a minute. So let's just get some mains power in. And I've got the required negative tip 6 volts just here. Right, this may still chew the tapes up, but at least we know it's not because the power is under and overvolting and providing sort of uneven speeds. Nah. Right, rewind. Fast forward, sort of. Play. Right, it's working again now. So just whilst we've got that tape freed up. Good, balance seems to be working. The headphone socket though is, let me turn that down. Yeah, the headphone socket, if you can hear it, is pretty dodgy, a bit flaky that. Not uncommon at all on these units. So there we go then. What do we know? Basically we're going to get in here, obviously give everything a deep clean and a polish, but inside of this we'll clean the head, we'll clean the capstan, we'll probably get the flywheel out anyway when we do the belts, so we'll replace both the belts. There's a main motor drive belt, there is also an internal transfer belt for the fast forward and rewind. We shall basically just clean the mech, lube everything, clean the transport controls. We'll give a cursory clean and re-lubrication of the pots and the mute switch as well, and reflow the headphone jack on the board. It's probably just a bit fatigued on the circuit board, so we'll reflow that as well. So a few little jobs to do. So yes, on the face of it, it's in glorious condition, but it's actually not usable at the moment. We've got corrosion on, or at least, yeah, some corrosion on the battery contacts. It's not playing now, it's not fast forwarding properly, it's chewing out the tapes, chewing up the tapes. The headphone is intermittent, so there are jobs to do. Right, good, well at least we know that. First thing then, let's get it open. So just be gentle, we don't slip with this screwdriver now. Last thing we want to do is put scratches on this 43-year-old plastic that's survived so long. And the 5th tiny little screw just lives down here. Not quite watchmaker screws, but as small a screw as you'd find, certainly in a personal stereo back in the 1980s. Just keep them safe. Put the top plate somewhere safe. You can see the condition of this, it really is beautiful. Right, there's the back casing. Nothing to see here apart from the battery ribbon. Zoom back out a little bit for a moment. Okay, here we are, and I can see no one's ever been in here before, and I'll explain why. Solder joints look to be original. No extra creases or movement on the shield, but also the original tape is in place as well. And if I just give you an example of that, there's some tape here that holds the head cable over the top of the idler mechanism, and you'll see that that falls apart the second you touch it, which is fine because we'll put some fresh tape on there after. But the point being that yeah, no one's been in here, no one's disturbed this, and there is no way of getting in there and servicing it without removing this. So the next stage is just to get the shield off. I'll whiz through this a bit today because I do have other videos on this particular model. But suffice it to say, what we're going to do now is get the leaf switch contacts away, the battery contacts. We're going to get the, well, as few as we can actually. Sometimes I go the whole hog and I take the LED lights out, I disassemble all of the heads and everything like that. But I think today I'm just going to stick to this side. Also there's a capacitor that solders onto the headphone earth just there. But we should get these away, peel this back, get to the belts. And just while I'm waiting for the soldering iron to warm up, you may get a closer look now at the corrosion on the end of the battery springs. Obviously it's not a deal breaker. We could see that with a bit of jiggery pokery we could get it to work. So we'll go in there. Now's a good time really to get good access to clean those. But first thing I want to do is just start peeling these wires away, get to the belts. Now to remove a few screws. And there is the board. Beautiful. Right. So there was an issue with take up. So the take up rubber might be slipping a little bit. We'll have a look at that in a moment. But first I want to get the idler mechanism out anyway so that we can change the belts. I'm just soaking some of these screws with some acetone just to loosen up the original locking lacquer on the screws. So there it is, there's the idler tyre. And we're going to try and get this gripped back up a little bit if we can. In terms of changing the belts, the first one, well actually let's leave them in situ. You can see it's wobbly, a bit loose. Get this back in frame for you. You can see that doesn't kind of run terribly true at the moment, so we're going to lose that one anyways. That's your first one, and I'm just going to lift the flywheel up for this one enough to get the second belt out, which you can see is also totally elliptical. Both need replacing, so just have a bit of a clean up of everything, get those back in. I'm going to see if I can actually get this idler tyre cleaned up a little bit, and then we'll retest. If not, we're just going to have to replace it. So just while I'm thinking about it, I've put some rubber renew onto the idler tyre, see if we can get that back. I've also cleaned the pulleys, and I'm just running a drop of alcohol into the switches and the pots, which were working, to be fair. But anything we can do to help. And a bit of lubrication as well. Marvellous. Right. Let's get these new belts on. Okay, we've got a quick fly in the ointment. I've just gone to replace one of the belts, which I've got plenty of, and weirdly I do so many 440s, 333s, 4430s. I've normally got stacks of this belt as well, which is the internal one, but I've done so many lately I hadn't realised I've got none of those left. So I'm going to have to order some belts. You'll see me tomorrow or possibly the day after when I've got some new belts. Then we'll start getting this on. I've also, I'm not sure if I'd already said, but I've put some rubber renew on the idler tyre. We'll give that a go Failing that, I've got a 3440 which I'd previously serviced, but it's got an issue with one of the channels which I'm trying to investigate at the moment, but I know that the mech works, so I can always steal the idler mechanism off of that if we need to. Right, I'm going to go and order some belts. Next time you see me the other side of a dissolve or something, I'll be back ready to continue with this. Well, it's a couple of days later now. I've got the new belts, but I've made good use of my time by cleaning and lubricating the potentiometers and the mute switch, and also reflowing the headphone jack, which can be problematic on these units, so I've done it as a preventative measure as much as anything else. I'm about to put the belts on, but I think what I'll do first is just clean up these slightly corroded battery terminals. You may remember just from the beginning that it did actually work as it is, so it's not a deal breaker, but we'll clean these up and get them as fresh as we can. Anyway, my potion of choice tends to be lime juice, so I'm just going to gently let that soak, wipe that away, and then just clean it up with some isopropyl alcohol, and then we'll get these belts on. So belts then, and the first one we want is the lower or transfer belt, which you've got to sneak underneath there onto the pulley and around. And then the motor belt. Like so. So I've just refitted the idler mechanism, and now with play engaged, if we just turn the flywheel, we'll see that everything's working, or appears to be working well, including the take-up wheel, so it shouldn't, fingers crossed, chew up any tapes. Right, this is a bit grotty still on the transport controls here, so whilst we can get to them, I'm just going to give them a bit of a clean now, and we'll get everything soldered back up, give it a try. Okie dokie then, so the idler's all in place. I've put some locking compound on these screws as well to stop them vibrating loose. Tacked the head cable down, resoldered everything, screwed the board down. I haven't fitted the screen yet, just in case we've got to get it all apart and start again, as it were. So I'm just going to actually run some direct power into there rather than the batteries. There's no point trying to have batteries popping in and out there without the full casing on. So just going to put, well, first of all, does it work? Okay, good. So you can see the operation light is on and it's playing. Rewind is working, and fast forward is working. So it's all a bit fragile because we haven't put it all back together yet. So let's just get a tape in here as well. And yeah, it's all a bit Heath Robinson because obviously the case isn't in there yet properly. Good. In fact, let's try some speakers. Just put some tiny little speakers in as well. Okay. There we go. And rewind. Fast forward. Okay, yeah, not too bad at all. Just going to clean the pots one more time, and I think we should be in business. Okay folks, there was a slight change of plan there in the end. Keen-eyed viewers might notice that the actual circuit board is now different, so I put it all back together. I've cleaned the battery contacts up quite nicely. Everything's gone back, and there was a problem with the left-hand channel, and basically it's completely dropped out. I thought it was the headphones, so I reflowed that, traced the signal back, and we've got issues, I think, somewhere in the actual amplifier side of things. Short of getting the O-scope out and going through it and tracing it back, then I've got to find a donor unit if it's the chip that's gone or whatever. So the whole idea of this exercise is to try and turn this around quickly and get it refreshed and back on its way. So what I did is I had another unit, which is here. So I think this is unit number 3, because we've pinched the idler mechanism off of a 3440 to go into this one. And then we robbed a circuit board off of this 3330. And the net effect of that is that the amplifier chips on that side were okay. So I've cleaned the pots and switches again on that. Issues with it though is that the DC input jack was corroded. And you might not see in there, to be honest, but it's pretty grisly, and that wasn't the best. So I've had to desolder this one from the donor board and replace it with the good one from the original one. Ditto for the mute switch as well. Now this one I thought was only missing the cap off the top, the blue cap. Turns out that the actual plastic plunger is snapped, so I had to remove that switch as well and transplant that onto there. That's now working fine. I also transplanted the headphone socket, the headphone socket, which was better as well. So basically the belts and the mech and everything generally is the original unit, as is the housing. I've taken the idler mechanism off a donor 3440. I've taken the board off of this one, put a donor board in, but salvaged the headphone jack and the DC jack and the mute switch off of the other board and put those on. And it is now all working beautifully. So all that remains is actually to put it all back together again. And then this time when you see it, or next time you see it, it should be pretty much finished and ready to go. But it just goes to show, doesn't it, that the whole point of this exercise was to see whether or not we could actually turn these units around quite quickly and cheaply. And we bought them as a consignment, and this was one of the consignment of Walkmans or personal cassettes that I got in, and it only cost me on average, I say, around about £8 or £10 per unit. You know, if you average it across all the ones that were in the box. Some of those are going to be probably just junk anyway, which pushes the unit value for the half decent ones up, as it were. Then you have to factor in, I'm now into my 3rd unit effectively for donor parts, and yes, did I have to strip a idler tyre off the other unit? I don't, but to get the correct one I'd have to import it from Europe, and that would have cost literally more than the price I paid for the unit just for one piece of rubber. Then you're into the diagnostics of trying to diagnose the channel and finding out whether it's a preamp circuit, whether one of the chips has gone, or whether one of the caps has failed in that circuit. You know, you're into a lot of time then, which obviously is money. Then you've got parts that need stripping out and all the rest of it. So yes, in theory, you know, at the top of the video, you know, I'm sort of saying that these things cost maybe £8 or £10. In reality, you're probably thick end of £100 in by the time you finish, not to mention your time. So yeah, that's why, ladies and gents, you ever see these things up for sale that have been properly serviced or 100% guaranteed working and in excellent condition and all the rest of it, that's where the money is. People often think, you know, you buy something for a £5 and then sell it the next week for £100. It doesn't work like that at all. So yeah, this is probably the best part of a day's work in its own right, just getting this working. And once it's done, it will be working, you know, and it's in gorgeous condition. It will have had 2 brand new precision cut belts. It's got a really good idler tyre. The mechanism's been cleaned and lubed. All the switches are cleaned and lubed and tested. It's in beautiful condition, clean battery contacts. It will be absolutely faultless and sound superb. But to get to that stage, yeah, isn't just a case of getting it out of the box, giving it a wipe and chucking it on eBay. It doesn't work like that. So just a bit of background. I'm just kind of having a little bit of a monologue. I wasn't planning on this, but I've literally just come back from making myself a coffee, which I've got here, my Transformers mug. So yeah, I just thought I'd come back and start putting this together, press record, and just have a chat to you guys, just to give you a bit more of an insight into what it's actually like. Incidentally, on the coffee side of things, if you want to head over to my Buy Me a Coffee page, any help with donations to the channel to keep it running would be massively appreciated. You're under no obligation, of course, you're always welcome, but if you did want to help me out, you know, that'd be super. Thank you very much indeed. Okay, let's try this again. So I'm about to screw all this back together for the final time. We'll cross our fingers once again. I'll see you in a minute. So here it is then, the Sanyo M3330. Absolutely gorgeous. Bought as part of a consignment, and to be honest, the one I really wanted and the reason for buying the whole box of rubbish. And I've got to say, at least cosmetically, it was in the best condition I could have ever hoped for. Unfortunately, it wasn't without its problems, as usual, of course, as guaranteed on these models. It needed new belts. Also, the idler tyre had pretty much worn, so replaced that with one from a donor unit. Got it all sort of working mechanically and everything, and found that actually one of the channels was down. Now, 9 times out of 10 on one of these Sanyo M series, it tends to be something to do with the headphone socket. Unfortunately, it's to do with the channel electronics on this, and because this was a short and sweet turn it around and see if it was worth fixing, I've ended up using the donor unit that I had to substitute the board, but that wasn't without its problems either. So we've had to change the headphone socket, the mute switch, and indeed the DC power jack to make sure that everything's tickety-boo. However, I'm pleased to say that internally and externally it's absolutely gorgeous. Now, I've hooked it up through these little Sanyo JSX37 speakers, which I have to say sound atrocious, but that's not why we're here really today. This is just to show it working, just to see the fruits of our labour, as it were. So let's press play. And I can't give you too much for copyright reasons, but you can see there's no crackle on the volume there as it plays. Also, the balance control works properly on this, and I'll just rewind it. You won't see much through the smoked screen, but suffice it to say, it's almost silent. It's currently fast forwarding and you can barely even hear it. So play one more time. And it's a bit of Genesis, a bit of prog rock, so the 4 seconds or so I'm allowed to show you isn't terribly eventful music, but suffice it to say, it's beautiful. It's running almost perfectly, to be honest with you, and I'm delighted with it. Yes, it was a lot of work for what should have been a simple belt change and service, but I'm glad that we stuck with it. It's absolutely stunning. It's as nice as a condition as you'll find. Happy days. So there it is, the Sanyo M3330. Thank you ever so much for watching. I'm currently working my way through some of the other Walkmans in my consignment, so do check out some of those. Also got a whole bunch of boomboxes, 8 tracks and vintage games as well, so check out some of my other videos. Consider subscribing if you haven't already. But anyway, listen guys, I'll be back soon, so you look after yourselves. I'll see you soon. Ta-ra for now. Bye bye.